It's the 9th of March already, into our third month of 2022. I'm back moth trapping at Sherwood Forest today in the country park area just in from the Swicket Road end. Mild conditions, there is a moon and a very thin layer of high cirrus cloud, but the temperature is forecasted to remain mild, so we should do well for some early spring moths. Well, there's a couple of species new for the year in already. Just approaching the sheet from just underneath where the camera is now is March moth, which is new for the year. But also there's a mottled grey, which is in one of the first moths that came in actually, and I potted that up to get some fresh photos of it because it's a long time since I last saw mottled grey. Only seen it here. Usually gets good numbers actually just up from here, a few yards away in the Gleethorpe Open. And I know when Dillis and I have trapped there, you could hold a torch and swing the torch low over the grass on the Gleethorpe Open and see quite a few mottled greys just sat resting with the wings closed on the grass heads, the old grass heads. So a promising start. It would be nice if it clouded up. Just hope the temperature doesn't drop too much here, but as long as I get a few moths and in at least an hour, I'll be quite happy. They're starting to come in now. There's what looks like another pale brindle beauty that's just about to work its way in. A lot are flying in and dropping well short of the sheet at the moment. So we'll see how it goes. Now this one's settled down nicely. This is a species that I can show you. While it remains still like this is a very attractively marked species called yellow-horned. Sherwood is very good for this species, but it's a widespread moth across much of Nottinghamshire. Usually appears in March, the first ones, and continues into April, but peak numbers here have always been during March. And we've had some brilliant nights where numbers of these have turned up. Whether tonight will be such a night or whether it's just a little bit too early remains to be seen. But say, there's two of these in there, beautifully marked, quite variable, not particularly colourful, but the moths that fly early in the year aren't all about colour. That comes later. Now I've chosen this particular part of the country park because some might question, well, why aren't you putting the trap underneath these veteran oaks? Well, really, there's very little point. There's only a couple of micros that you tend to catch around the veteran oaks that you don't catch here. But this little area, it looks nothing really, to be honest. It's just young oaks and some old silver birch that have been left. They're all sort of getting towards the end of the life now. The birch is here, and it's a little patch of heathland on the side of where the car is, but it's always been good for a variety of moths. We had some fantastic nights trapping here, and it's the surrounding vegetation, because the understory of Sherwood Forest in terms of its floral diversity is absolutely piss poor. This area is good. It's got rank vegetation, species like dock and creeping thistle, white dead nettle, a range of other sort of rough plants and nettles. As such, it's always been good for some interesting invertebrates. There's often a log pile here on the right hand side of the screen as you look at it, and that was always good for longhorn beetles and the like. We always found that this spot here, while not being deep within the veteran oaks of the country park, offered the higher species list on any sort of trapping night, to be honest. And indeed, if you were to leave this area now and go deep within the oaks, there would be less mottled greys for a start. Always been better, the number of mottled greys here, and especially just a few yards away at the Gleethorpe Open. Mottled grey, of course, is one of those species that's already come in. There's no big numbers of moths coming in tonight. The sky is largely clear, but still covered with a thin layer of very high cirrostratus cloud now. But the temperature's still not too bad, and at least the breezy conditions of today has dropped, so it's not too breezy. Now, no matter what light I use on this moth, it's never going to be spectacular. You're not going to gasp in awe at its beauty. Although it does look gold in this light, it isn't. This is actually mottled grey. It's very nondescript, but intricately patterned when seen well, and I'll put a proper photo in somewhere here. I'll say this is not a moth that you'll find regularly in Nottinghamshire. It's more of a Sherwood Forest speciality, to be honest. In the grassy heathland areas, you do get it in Clumber Park and various sites in between it's been recorded at. But this has always been the best site that I've ever known for it. So this is mottled grey. It's a sparkler, isn't it? Now here's another moth, not particularly striking again, and if anything it looks like a gigantic Torch Cody's alternella in wing shape, but it's the geometried March moth. Very common. You will get this in gardens if you run the light in the early months of the year. Many people don't, but this will turn up occasionally. I think from the garden in the middle of Market Walsall had one single record, which in that context I was extremely chuffed at. Somewhere like Sherwood Forest, it's very common this time of year, but it's found widely throughout the county. It's another new species for the year. Now, looking at this moth, you may think, well, these all look the bloody same to me. And in this light, to be honest, a lot of them do. But this has just come in, and this is the first of this species of the year, and this is a male Dihernia fagella, and easy to tell it's a male because the females have only vestigial wings. This moth is one of the most regularly and frequently asked queries for identification on many Facebook pages. It's immensely common in woodland. It does occur in gardens. I've had it numerous times at home. Always the male, of course, but the female and the male are very frequently found sat post-emergence on the trunks of oaks in almost any kind of habitat, very regularly recorded on isolated oak trees in the Ecrine area. It's quite variable. There's a dark form to this and a lighter form than this one. Unfortunately, in this light it doesn't look much, so I will post a proper photo, give you a better idea of what it's exactly like. It is actually quite a nicely marked species. It's one that if you're trapping early in the year, one of those that you need to get to know, because you're going to see a lot of it. Right, there's two species that have just come in. I don't like doing in the pot shots, so I will put in a better photo. And this is quite surprising. I've totally forgotten about this species, but this is water carpet, and this is a beautifully marked moth. It's the best marked species that's come in tonight. Nearly. I say nearly because one of the best moths that you can see this time of year is this chap, and this is the beautiful Oak Beauty, which thankfully has just stopped, but got tremendous feathery antennae up these males. This is another very variable species, but always beautifully marked. This shot again doesn't do this moth justice, so I'll post a photo of one that does. Both oak beauty here and water carpet here, and now I've took the total up to 12 species, along with, there's another oak beauty just dropped in. The other one that's just turned up is the first common Quaker of the year. And here's, just flying around, here's another oak beauty. Oak beauty is always thudding and then thud around in sort of large yellow underwing fashion. Thankfully, this one's stopped and is playing. But one of our more beautifully marked moths that fly at this time of the year. Some can be very dark. The other one that's knocking around here now is much darker and less contrasting and marked than the one in this pot. If it settles down, I'll show it you. Well, the sky has stayed clear and the temperature's dropping as well, so I'm going to call a halt to this particular trapping session. To be honest, we've got all the species that I would expect from Sherwood Forest. They're already in. Rather disappointing really in terms of numbers, and I thought it was forecasted to cloud over and remain cloudy tonight, but it hasn't. Still, it's given an insight into what species are flying in Sherwood Forest presently. All changes over the coming weeks. Once you get March out of the way, you get some really good numbers of moths of the species that we've recorded tonight during March. It's not until you get into May that the number of species starts to improve, but not necessarily the numbers of moths. You can get more species, but in very small numbers. Gradually all that changes over the course of the year. In a few months' time, in June and July, when I'm trapping here at the time, I'll be inundated. The sheet becomes alive with moths here. It takes some keeping up with what moths coming in, what moths leaving. But it's been a good hour or so. Nothing tremendously exciting to show you, but interesting how species have already ended their flight periods already. That's how it seems. No spring usher. And only one Tortricodes alternata. That's them done for another 11 months. And that's it for tonight. We should have bought my telescope now.